Thank you to Rabbi Yaniv Meirov and to the whole Chazaq organization, and also to TorahAnytime.com. They're all doing wonderful things for preparing this event and for all the many events that they do and inspiring many hundreds of people. Bez Hashem, you guys should continue with the success that you have and grow Mechair El Chair to spread throughout the whole America, the whole world. Amen ve'amen. Few questions I'd like to ask about Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, maybe to get a little bit further in to hash out the details of what the morning is about. And we know the Gemara tells us that there are a few things that transpired during the time of Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. The first one the Gemara mentions is Nishtabu HaLuchot, which means that the Luchot were broken through Moshe Rabbeinu because of the worshipping of the golden calf. And the Maharal asks a question. He says, I don't really understand, why are we mourning the breaking of the Luchot? Isn't it more fundamental? Shouldn't we be more concerned about the fact that we worshipped Avodah Zarah, idolatry? That's really where the problem was located. If you look at the core of the issue, there's a dispute exactly when the worship of the Eged HaZahav happened, but it was either on the 16th or the 17th of Tammuz. But it would seem to be that would be more apropos to mourn the tragedy of Am Yisrael doing the most catastrophic sin that took place in the nation, in the history of Am Yisrael. That's number one. Number two, why is it that the mourning and the breaking of the Luchot was so tragic? The fact of the matter is, it's true that the Luchot were broken, but you could replace them, as they were indeed replaced. There was the second Luchot. So in the long run, we didn't really lose out from the Luchot. So what exactly is the reason to mourn something that wasn't really the final step? It wasn't really the last of the Luchot. That's number one. Number two, when we talk about the fact that the Korbanot stopped in Beit HaMikdash, Butar Tamid, the Gemara says, that the Korban of the Tamid, which is a Korban that lasted every single day, consistently, we had the morning Korban, the afternoon Korban. It was brought every single day. Why is it that we stress the Korban Tamid? First of all, let's say, fine, we lost out on the Tamid, the consistency of the sacrifice. Okay, we still have Beit HaMikdash. There's still other Korbanot. We're not focusing on them. We're not focusing on any of the other worshippings we do in Beit HaMikdash. Why is there this focal point? Same question could be asked on the third, where we talk about the breaching of the walls of Yerushalayim. Okay, on its own right, on its face, that's not really where the tragedy lies. The tragedy lies in overrunning the city, taking over Beit HaMikdash, destroying Beit HaMikdash. Why is the breaching of the walls made an emphasis? Is the one that we declare to be so tragic that that's what we have to mourn for? And in truth, it's a fundamental line that runs through all these questions. And we have to try understand. A certain sense, events could be catastrophic, but not inherently due to the event itself. Rather, the event revealed a certain relationship that we have developed with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and what we would call the turning of the tide. The tide has now turned, and Am Yisrael benefited, and they gleaned from a very strong bond with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We were with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we left Mitzrayim, about to receive the Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to Har Sinai, and Am Yisrael does a terrible sin. The fact that you did a terrible sin in its own right doesn't mean you lose that relationship. You could still you could still create a bond. When Moshe Rabbeinu put the final nail in the coffin, and he said, no, this relationship is going to be severed. It's not going to be the same. The Luchot are going to have to be broken. We cannot merit such a Luchot. That would be akin. The equivalent of saying the husband gives the wife the ring. He says, I don't want you to have that ring. I'm taking that ring back and I'm going to throw it away. And that ring, you're not worthy of it. And that was a sign. It was a telltale to the relationship that was never going to be the same. That Am Yisrael, maybe we will have a second set of Luchot, but that second set does not have the same love, relationship, bond with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that kind of set the tone to what the relationship is going to be. And that's really where the mourning lies. The mourning lies not on the event itself, but rather the fact that it proved and revealed that we don't have that bond in connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu punishes, it's not about the punishment, it's that revelation that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not happy with us. That's where the mourning lies. Same thing could be said about the Tamid. The Korban Tamid was a sacrifice that was brought every single day. It showed consistency. It showed a relationship. And that was lost. It was atoned. We don't have that same type of worship, that connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The breaching of the walls of Yerushalayim, the same thing can be said. When those walls were breached, it showed that we weren't impervious, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wasn't protecting us. The tide has officially turned, and it has become negative and to our detriment and not to our benefit. And that is the first signs of the final galut, the final exodus, was right there. That's when Am Yisrael realized that this is not going well for us, and we are not really strong in our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Sometimes we have a very difficult time relating to the morning and why we have to go and not listen to music during the 3 weeks. Why do we have to go ahead and not be allowed to take a shower during the Shavua Shechalbo or the 9 days? Why is it that we're doing all these elements of mourning? And I heard a beautiful parable in the name of Rabbi Yudulovich. He says, imagine to yourself you had a couple who was married for 20 years. And as much as they tried, as much as they prayed, as much as they did, they weren't able to have children. Eventually, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in His great mercy, gave them, she became pregnant, the wife became pregnant. And they went through the pregnancy, and first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, everything's going, Baruch Hashem, pretty well. By the time they realize they're about to go into labor, she, the woman, enters into labor, and the husband's waiting outside outside the room, and he's reading his Tehillim. And he's praying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that everything should go successfully. But as the time passes on, the husband notices that doctors keep coming in and keep leaving, and they consult with each other outside the room. Equipment is being brought in. He knows this is not standard procedure. And he realizes that there's something going on over here. The doctor comes over to him, and he says, look, the situation is absolutely grave. Your wife is in critical condition. We have two options in front of us. They're both very serious and very sad. The first of which, you have the possibility, we think we could save the mother, but it would be at the expense of the child. And on the other hand, we could save the child, but we can't save both. We can't save the mother and the child. You're going to have to make a decision. Who do you want us to save? The father is shocked. He doesn't know what to think. He says, I have to talk to a Rav. How am I going to decide this? This is literally life and death situation. There's no time for a Rav. You have to make a decision. It's moments. We're talking about we lose these moments and we could lose both of them. He says, let me at least talk to my wife. It's her life. She has to be the one to decide what she wants to do. And he explains to her the situation. She says to her husband, without hesitation, what purpose do I have to living if I'm going to live without a child? I'm not interested in that type of a life. I want the child to survive. And I'm willing to lose my life for the sake of the child. But tell the son, tell that child that I want him to remember me. Don't forget the commitment that I gave to you. Please, relay that message. Sure enough, the husband leaves the room, and the doctors did what they had to do, and the doctors were right. The mother passed away, and a baby, beautiful baby, healthy baby boy was born to him. You could imagine the next day, during the funeral, how tragic and how sad it was. People, the Rabbanim that were speaking, that were eulogizing, they were crying. Everybody in the audience was crying. It was so sad and emotional for everybody that was there. Time goes by, the little toddler becomes a bar mitzvah boy. And the night of his bar mitzvah, the father turns to him and he says, my dear son, you know that tonight is not just your bar mitzvah, it's also the yortzeit of your mother. Your mother passed away the same day you were born. Please, you are a chiyuv. You have an obligation to go up, to be the chazan, to lead the congregation. Make sure that your tefillah, your prayer is heartfelt, that it's from the depth of your heart. Go slowly, don't go quickly. And the sun goes up, and he's standing up there, and he's about to start Kaddish, he's about to start the Shema, and he starts running through the Tefillah. Shema Yisrael, he finishes it in a minute. Shmona Yisrael. Alenu Leshabeach, 6 minutes haven't even passed, and he's done with the entire Tefillah. The father sees this, and he faints. He doesn't know what to do with himself. He just collapses. He can't believe what just took place. As he wakes up, he goes running to the son. People wake him up. He looks at the son and says, how could you do this to your mother? Where's your heart? Where's your emotions? Where's your feelings? The son looks at him and he says, feelings? Emotions? What do I know about my mother? I've never seen my mother. My mother to me is just a stone in the graveyard. That's all she is. Abotai, sometimes we act in that way. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he had two options. He could destroy the Beit HaMikdash. He could allow the wrath and the sins to affect stones and sticks. Or he could take us. He could take his children. The two most dear things to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, I'm willing to sacrifice my glory, my presence in this world, for the sake of saving Am Yisrael. The Beit HaMikdash was the vehicle that saved us. And we look and we say, well, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, why shouldn't we be allowed to listen to music? Is there anything we could do? Could we listen to this type of music? Maybe we could find a loophole on this matter. So we want to eat meat, so let's find a way we could do it. We start finding these loopholes. How could you not have that emotion? How could we not go ahead and implement in ourselves and realize to ourselves that what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did for us, what the Beit HaMikdash meant for us, is exactly what we have, what we're standing here today. Sometimes what happens is that, today we live in such an intellectual society. There is a lot of wisdom, a lot of education. We're very educated people. And it's difficult. You say someone who's so intellectual, he's supposed to cry for the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. But let me tell you, the Lev Eliyahu, Rabbi Leeor Lopian, mentions a story that happened 3,000 years ago. When the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, there was a philosopher, you might all be familiar with him, his name was Plato. And Plato was invited by Nebuchadnezzar HaRasha to visit the ruins of Beit HaMikdash. He came and he met none other than Yirmiyah HaNavi. Could you imagine such a confrontation? Yirmiyah HaNavi on the one hand and Plato on the other hand. And Plato witnesses that Yirmiyah HaNavi, he is lamenting and crying and in bitter tears over the destruction of Beit HaMikdash. Yirmiyah HaNavi, for those who went through Yirmiyah, could see that there was no consoling him over the destruction of Beit HaMikdash. It was the most tragic event that he felt and he endured through the course of his life. And Plato sees this and he's puzzled. He looks at Yirmiyah and he asks him, you're the wise, you're the chacham of Am Yisrael, of this holy nation. How could you go ahead and bring yourself and cry for this destruction of sticks and stones? It's unbefitting of your wisdom. Plus, additionally, it's not the ways of an intelligent person to cry over events that happen in the past. We say the expression, spilt milk. You don't cry over things that happened in the past because there's no way of repairing or fixing the past. Why are you crying over what happened? Yirmiyah Navi does not directly respond to him, but he says to him, listen, you're a philosopher. I'm sure as a philosopher, you probably have a good number of quandaries you haven't really resolved yet. So Plato looks at him and says, indeed I do. I have a number of them that I don't think, truthfully, any person in the world will be able to resolve. Yirmiyah says to him, why don't you tell me your sefekot, your doubts, and I will resolve them for you. And Plato begins to express all of his philosophical debates and ideas and where he has no more avenues to solve and what the problems are. Yirmiyah, off the cuff, responds to each and every single one of his quandaries and solves them to the content of Plato himself. Plato is witnessing this and he is in shock. This man has never heard the question in his life. And he already has beautiful and well thought out approaches and ideas to answer and to explain every single one of the points. He's looking at him and he says, I can't believe you're an actual human being. You can't be. It's not possible that you're a mere mortal. And Yirmiyahu Navi says, all the wisdom that I have just portrayed in front of you, that all came from the sticks and the stones of the Beit HaMikdash, and I shouldn't mourn over it. As far as your second question is concerned, how could such a wise man cry and be sad about the past? That, I'm afraid I won't be able to explain to you because you won't be able to understand. That's a powerful story. I don't think if the Lev Eliyahu wouldn't have said this, I don't know how we could have known this. But you have to think about those words. Yirmiyahu Navi is saying, well, there is something to cry about. Even if it's in the past. How do you explain that? He says that Plato wasn't able to understand, but we have to venture and try to do our best to understand what Yirmiyahu Navi was crying about, because it's incumbent upon us to cry those same tears that Yirmiyahu did. It's possible to explain based on something that might seem unrelated. Cain and Hevel. Oh, the story of Cain and Hevel we learn when we are young kids, maybe pre-1A, maybe first grade. And the sad part is sometimes we don't revisit the story. And we kind of take it on its superficial level and just assume that those facts, but they can't be true. I mean, the basic story, Cain brings an offering, and his offering is from the flax, the land, the cheap part of his portion. And Hevel brings from the best of the sheep, which is his portion. He brings from the best of it. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't listen, doesn't heed the korban, the sacrifice of Cain, and he accepts the sacrifice of Hevel. Except, you see, so that's the story on its face, and Cain gets upset and he kills Hevel. But you got to think deeper into the story, because the commentaries point out to us that first of all, who convinced Hevel to bring a korban? The Kli Yakar writes, it was Cain. Cain was the one that convinced Hevel to bring the korban. Now, I don't understand Cain at all. You have half the world to yourself. Every single tree, every single land belongs to you. You are the owner of all the real estate in the world. Why are you bringing a Kadosh Baruch Hu, the cheapest stuff that you got? Doesn't make any sense. You got to think about that. Cain was no fool. But the truth of the matter is, Cain was actually very, very deep in his understanding of the way it works in Shamayim. And he understood something that we might fail to realize sometimes. To HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes no difference if I bring the best or the worst. Now one thing is for sure, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me a gift. He gave me all the land of the world. He gave me of the best, of the worst, and of the middle. He gave me everything. If I am to sacrifice to HaKadosh Baruch Hu the best, in a certain sense, what I'm doing is I am denying the good, and I am not showing recognition for that which HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me. Because why should I give HaKadosh Baruch Hu the best? In return, it doesn't make any difference to HaKadosh Baruch Hu whether you give him of the best or of the worst. And as far as I'm concerned, this is a gift from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I shouldn't be negligent in the gift and give him from my best when I could give him just the same from the worst, and it will be the same in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it would be negligent in my accepting of the present and the godly gift that God gave me. That's a pretty interesting philosophy. I mean, at least he's coming from a very strong perspective. As a matter of fact, there seems to be a proof to him from the Gemara as well. We won't get into it. It's a Gemara in Shavuot that seems to back him up on that point. What was his mistake? Rav Moshe Feinstein explains, the error wasn't intellectual. He was 100% right. Everything he was saying on the intellectual level was correct. There is no difference what you bring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because to HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't make a difference. But that's if you work only on an intellectual level. The part that Cain failed to realize is that as a human being, we don't just work on intellectual levels. We have emotions. And we have to be in touch and worship God with our emotions, not just within our intellect. And the mistake and the flaw that he had is he thought of it purely in terms of the mindset. But in truth, you have to have a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What is your heart going to believe if you bring from the worst? Your heart's not going to feel a connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're not going to feel it. Maybe intellectually you're right, but emotionally it's not going to lead to a relationship. And that might be part of the point that Yirmiyahu was saying, that you're right, intellectually, why cry over spilled milk? But if you want to have a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the heart has to be vibrant. You have to feel that emotion, because what kind of a relationship? We don't just have an intellectual relationship. We have an emotional bond with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we have to respect and honor that bond. Finish off, I heard, later saw in the Shosheret Arishon of Brisk, one of the Sfarim, it says about Rabbi Yosef Dov Soloveitchik. He was a co-Rosh Yeshiva of the Yeshiva of Volozhin, and later on moved to the city of Slotsk, where he became the chief rabbi. And as he was approaching an elderly age, he decided that it's time for him to retire. Enough. It's been a long time, and he's worked really hard, and he wants to have time devoted to his own personal learning. So he wanted to step down from his position in Slotsk and just as a private citizen to learn and to be, maybe teach here and there, but not to take such a heavy burden at such an elderly age. When in Brisk, which was a powerhouse of Torah, a strong, vibrant Jewish community, heard that Rabbi Yosef Dov Soloveitchik was stepping down from his position of Slotsk, they immediately pounced on the situation and said, this is our opportunity to bring such a great man to our city. And they sent a delegation of their most important, prestigious people. They went out to Slotsk to try to coerce, to convince the Rav to come down, to come to the Brisk. Now the Rav refused to hear it. He did not want, under any circumstance, to go. He was already older. It was tough for him. He didn't want to take the position, and he refused. They offered him a nice amount of money, very respectable. They offered him the honor of being in the most great cities of Torah, the strongholds of Torah that existed at that time, and he rejected it. So, okay, what are you going to do already? They started conversing with him, and divrei Torah, just learning and different things. They got off the topic, they talked about other things, and they got engaged in a conversation of the Torah, and it was very lively and lovely. They had a good, enjoyable conversation. They saw that the Brisk Rav's attitude, the Rabbi Yosef Dov Soloveitchik's attitude, was in a much better spirit than he was before. And one of the individuals of the delegation took that opportunity, and he said, okay, right now I'm going to go ahead and make a final attempt to try to bring him to the yeshiva. He says, there are 20,000 Jews in Brisk that are waiting to hear your voice. They're waiting to hear your Torah. Are you going to reject the calls of thousands and thousands of Jews that want to hear what you have to say? And those words, the way they were expressed, with the emotions, penetrated into the heart of Rabbi Yosef Dov Soloveitchik. He thought about it, and he couldn't reject it. He couldn't say no. He couldn't bring himself to say no to the call of thousands and thousands of Jews. And he accepted the position. That's the greatness of the Brisker Rav, that he can go ahead, and it's not the money, it's not the honor. It's that there's Jews willing to hear what he has to say. I can't say no to them. The story came to the ears of the Chafetz Chaim. When the Chafetz Chaim heard this story, he began to cry. He said, if the great Da'at Torah mind, with the great knowledge that Rabbi Yosef Dov Soloveitchik had in the Torah, and in his understanding of the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he heard the call of 20,000 Jews, and he couldn't say no to them. There are Jews that are seeking me. I can't say no. Says the Chafetz Chaim, how much more so if Am Yisrael were to get up and they were to turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and demand the coming of Mashiach. We want to hear the voice of our Messiah, of our Mashiach Tzidkenu. How much more so could HaKadosh Baruch Hu not turn them down? And with those words, the Chafetz Chaim began to cry. Those words are the powerful words that we have to make sure that we live by, that we understand. We live in an affluent society. We live in a very enjoyable period of time, historically speaking. It's very difficult sometimes to want and desire and to seek the coming of Mashiach, but it's upon us to make sure that we do that job properly and that we call out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, we want we seek and we desire to hear that beautiful voice of the coming of Mashiach. B'mirav v'yamenu v'nomar amen.